The glass hit my lap with a cold splash. Orange juice soaked through the fabric, running down my thighs and pooling on the chair. Ryan didn't flinch. He handed off the empty glass like nothing happened and walked back to his seat. Julia laughed. Oops, guess these things happen when you're old? Someone chuckled. A fork clinked. The room didn't freeze, it carried on. I reached for a napkin, stopped. My fingers pressed against the edge of the table instead. Firm. I looked at my son. His head turned slowly toward me. Mom, Marcus said, voice tight. Don't start. He's just a kid. I hadn't said a word yet. The fabric clung to my skin. I felt it cooling, settling in. My plate was still full. Ham, green beans, rolls I brought. The chair creaked as I shifted slightly, not to clean myself, just to breathe. Across the table, Julia leaned in to whisper something to Ryan. He smirked. Her parents avoided my eyes. My fork remained untouched. I kept my hands, folded elbows in. I didn't excuse myself. Didn't apologize for existing. The juice stained darker as it dried. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, but didn't care. That was worse. My bag sat on the floor beside me. The zipper wasn't fully closed. A corner of the red folder poked out thick paper laminated tabs. I adjusted it gently with my foot. No one asked if I was cold. No one offered a towel. Marcus poured himself another drink. Julia stood topping off glasses with her usual flare eyes, never landing on me. Eventually, I stood. Slow, deliberate. My fingers left damp marks on the underside of the table as I pushed away. I'll freshen up, I said softly. Marcus didn't respond. Julia clinked her spoon against her glass. I picked up my purse and walked toward the hallway. The carpet absorbed the sound of my steps. Past the family photos, the cheerful wreath, the framed sign that said, Gather. Behind me, they resumed talking. They didn't lower their voices. Inside the guest bathroom, I locked the door. Sat on the closed toilet seat. The fabric against my legs was cold and heavy. I didn't cry. I just sat. No knock came. No voice called out. I unzipped the bag, stared at the folder, then closed it again. When I returned, they had moved on to dessert. There was no place set for me. I pulled the chair back. It scraped across the floor. Julia flinched only slightly, but enough. Ryan scooted closer to her. She rested a hand on his shoulder and leaned in stage whisper quiet, but I heard every word. You don't have to sit next to her. I sat anyway. My plate was gone. So was my fork. My mug of coffee was still there, cold now, untouched. I moved it closer to me. Julia didn't meet my eyes. Ryan looked past me, bored. His sweatshirt sleeve dragged over the corner of the tablecloth. He didn't apologize. I looked at him. Calm. Gentle. You know, I said when your mother went back to work, I was the one who picked you up from school. I made your snacks, helped you with those awful science projects. Julia rolled her eyes. It's not about the past, Lorene. Marcus set his fork down. The sound was louder than it should have been. Mom, he said, just stop. He's not your grandkid. Let it go. The words dropped like weight. I blinked. Just once. My hands stilled. The tablecloth's edge curled under my fingers. I didn't look at Julia. I didn't look at Marcus. I stared at the mug in front of me. Steam long gone. The smell faint, bitter. I didn't argue. Didn't remind him that I'd paid for Ryan's braces when Julia's insurance lapsed. That I watched him every summer for 6 years straight. That I kept his baby photos in an album no one else cared to update. I reached for the mug, held it in both hands. It was still full. The ceramic edge was chipped, had been for years. One of the few things they hadn't taken or replaced. No one said anything after that. Someone cut a slice of pie. The dishwasher hummed in the next room. Outside headlights passed, casting a brief shadow on the wall. I stood. walked toward the kitchen. No one stopped me. Julia turned her back as I passed. Marcus looked down at his phone. Ryan asked if he could have whipped cream. I took my mug with me. Not because I needed the drink, because it was mine. That night at home, I soaked the slacks in the sink. The stain clung to the fabric. I pressed my thumbs against the fibers, worked them in silence, watched the water turn faintly orange. I opened the door and stepped inside. Heat, perfume, and fried potatoes hit me all at once. Julia's mother looked up, blinked, forced a smile. "Oh, you came." I nodded, shrugged off my coat. The room was full, chairs packed around a long table, every one of them taken. Plates set, glasses poured. I scanned the room once, no spare seat, no cushion dragged from the living room, no stool from the kitchen. Marcus stayed seated. Didn't wave, didn't rise. Julia clapped her hands. "Let's go ahead and start. Food's getting cold." I walked to the kitchen island and stood. No one made room. Julia poured me coffee like she was doing me a favor. I took it without thanks, carried the mug back to the edge of the room. The table buzzed stories, laughter, a toast about someone's promotion. I stood near the counter, coffee in hand, back straight. My fingers curled tighter around the mug. It shook once, almost unnoticeably. I didn't drink, didn't breathe too deep. From where I stood, I saw everything. Julia's mother kept serving herself first. Ryan passed the biscuits but skipped me. Someone refilled Marcus's glass. Not once did he look up. No one asked why I wasn't seated. No one noticed the extra cup in my hand, or pretended not to. I pulled out my phone, pressed the side button. The screen glowed. Voice memos. One tap. The red bar moved. I didn't need audio. I wanted proof. Where people sat, who looked, who didn't. I watched the way Julia leaned in toward Marcus, the way he nodded, the way Ryan kept his back to me. They made space between themselves and me like it was natural, like I was furniture moved to the garage. I took a single step back. My heel brushed the wall. I stayed still. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe less. Julia raised her glass. "To family," she said. I watched them raise theirs in return. I set my mug down on the marble counter. The sound was soft but final. Then I walked toward the front door. No one followed. Not even the dog barked. The sky was gray. The air bit at my skin. I didn't cry. I just walked. When I got home, I plugged in my phone, downloaded the recording, saved it, dated it, filed it away. I pressed play again, just to be sure. Julia's voice crackled through the speaker. "If we push her a bit more, she might move into assisted living. Then we could use the downtown place." A pause. Then Marcus. Calm. Steady. "Yeah, makes sense." I didn't move. The audio ended. The screen went black. I turned the phone over and set it on the table. I hadn't asked to hear it. It had synced by accident. Marcus's cloud account, still partially linked to mine from years ago when he couldn't remember his passwords. I stared at the blank wood in front of me. Sunlight from the window caught the edge of my cup. Cold coffee again. I reached out, picked up the phone with my right hand. The weight of it felt heavier now. My fingers shook slightly as I pressed the lock button. The screen disappeared. I didn't cry. Instead, I turned to the cabinet behind me, opened the middle drawer. Inside, next to old utility bills and clipped coupons, sat a small silver key. I picked it up, turned it over once. Didn't unlock anything, didn't stand, just held it. The key was cold, smooth edges. The same key I'd used to lock the bottom drawer last spring when Julia started asking too many questions about paperwork. I stared at it a moment longer, then set it down. I didn't open the drawer. Instead, I got up, walked to the fridge, pulled out last night's green beans and a slice of dry roast. Didn't heat anything. Didn't set a place. I ate standing up, fork scraping the plate bite by bite. Chewed slower than usual. Didn't taste much. The photo on the fridge, me, Marcus, and Ryan at the lake house, had started to curl at the edges. I looked at it, but didn't reach for it. When I finished eating, I rinsed the plate, dried it, put it back. Then I picked up the key again and slipped it into my sweater pocket. Upstairs, I heard the wind press against the window frame. I turned off the lights and sat back down at the kitchen table. The phone sat where I left it. The cloud backup folder blinked open on my laptop. I clicked through the recordings, saved one more copy, renamed it, moved it to a new folder. I unlocked the drawer. The click echoed louder than I expected. I slid it open slowly. No dust. No mess. Just 3 neat folders stacked side by side. I pulled the first one out. Cream-colored. Thick. Heavy with real paper, not digital copies. The deed came first. My name in black ink. No cosigners. No transfer clauses. No room for confusion. Below that, the trust agreement. Pages bound together with a metal clip. Initialed by both me and Warren, my husband, on every page. His signature on the final line steady and clean, even in his last year. I turned the page. There it was. The letter. On his old law firm's stationery. Dated 6 months before he passed. To my wife, Lorene, it began. This property shall remain solely in your possession and control for the rest of your life. No matter who asks otherwise. I didn't cry. I held the page at the top edge, then ran my finger along the bottom, slow, steady. Like I was sealing something invisible. My chest ached, not with sadness, but with something that had no name yet. I folded the letter back into its sleeve. Behind it, all in the back pocket of the folder, was one more document. Unsigned. Labeled Amendment Option A. I read it twice. It detailed a transfer restriction. No one, not even blood relatives, could occupy or manage the property without written consent from me or my legal representative. Not yet filed, but already notarized. Just waiting. I placed everything back into the folder, then closed it. Not rushed, not shaking. I locked the drawer again. My phone buzzed once. A calendar notification. Nothing important. I turned it off. That night I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't call anyone. I didn't open my book. I made tea by mistake. Caught myself. Poured it out. Brewed coffee instead. I sipped it in silence, sitting at the small table by the window. Just one light on. The street outside was empty. One raccoon passed. I picked up the unsigned amendment again, held it in one hand. My fingers traced the line for my signature. I didn't sign it yet, but I left the pen next to it. In the morning, I got dressed before sunrise. No makeup, no jewelry. I called the office. Hi, this is Lorene Carver. I'd like to schedule something quietly. I buttoned my coat, wiped a smudge from my glasses, then stepped outside. Julia had texted that morning. We're doing a quick family shoot, just casual. Thought it'd be good to show some unity. I said yes. The park was only 10 minutes away. Dry leaves clung to the benches. The photographer, young, polite, nodded when I arrived, then turned back to adjusting his lens. Julia wore beige, matching with Marcus. Ryan had on something too tight for him, but no one mentioned it. They were already smiling when I approached. Oh, good, you made it, Julia said, like she'd forgotten she invited me. I stood to the side, clutching my gloves. Ryan avoided my eyes. Marcus waved me over. Mom, just stand over there. We'll squeeze you in. I stood where they placed me. Far right. 1 foot just outside the frame. The photographer snapped a few, then asked just the core family. Julia laughed. Yes, let's do a few tighter ones. They didn't look at me as I stepped back. I returned to the bench, took out my phone, set it face down on the wood beside me. recording. Not because of what they said, but how they said it. I watched them pose. Saw Julia nudge Marcus's chin to fix his angle. Watched Ryan grin wide when she leaned in close. Their laughter echoed bright and hollow. I didn't blink. I didn't frown. When Julia glanced my way, I smiled. Just enough. The kind of smile that stays in place even when nothing feels right underneath it. The photographer clicked again. Julia reviewed the photos as they appeared. Perfect, she said, scrolling. Then she paused. Zoomed in. Cropped one. Cropped again. I watched her thumb swipe me out of every version. She turned to Ryan. Much better, don't you think? He nodded. I stood, picked up my phone, slipped it into my coat pocket. No one noticed. They laughed behind me as I walked toward the trees away from the camera, from the perfect light, from the neat framing. I pulled out my phone again, tapped into the folder labeled Estate Immediate, opened the PDF, attached it to a new email, to Geller and Frank LLP subject. Per our conversation, I hit send. The file went through. Behind me, the camera clicked again. He showed up with pastries. Box still warm. Smile too wide. Thought you might want breakfast, Marcus said, placing the bag on my kitchen counter like it meant something. I opened the cabinet. Took down one plate. Coffee, I asked. He nodded. Sat. Watched me move. No talk of the weather. No asking how I slept. He waited 2 sips before starting. We've been thinking, he said. I didn't answer. Poured coffee for myself. He cleared his throat. The apartment's nice, but it's a bit much, right? And Julia found this place bigger near the school. I nodded slowly. Let him keep going. If we sold this and moved you into something easier, ground floor, less maintenance, it'd help us secure the down payment. He softened his voice. You'd still have your own space. It's just smart planning for the whole family. I wiped the counter. One slow circle, then another. You've done so much, he said. I looked up. His eyes stayed on mine for 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then I smiled. We can talk more next week, I said. He exhaled. Great. Just think about it. I watched him leave, took the box of pastries and placed it in the fridge. I wouldn't eat them. I walked back to the table, sat with my coffee. No rush, no tremor in my hands. I reached into the drawer under the printer, pulled out the document I'd prepared last night, revised Will Draft C. 3 copies printed, unfolded, unsigned, ready. I smoothed the corner. No pen marks, no initials. Not yet. I read each clause again. My name, my terms. The trust holds. Property locked, amendment filed. Witnesses arranged but not notified. Timing was everything. I closed the folder, placed it next to the red one. Stacked neat, just beside the fruit bowl. The lamp buzzed faintly in the corner. The house was quiet. No calls from Julia, no texts from Ryan. That was fine. I rinsed my cup, dried it, set it back. At dawn, I opened the blinds. Light slid across the table, touching the folders first. I opened the drawer, placed the new will inside, unsigned. Then I set the red folder right beside it, side by side, silent, watching, waiting. I walked in 10 minutes early. The hostess blinked when I gave the name. Private party, she asked. I nodded. Carver. The room was already filling. Julia's parents sat near the middle. Her sister waved like we hadn't spoken in years, which we hadn't. Marcus motioned toward an empty seat near the end. I took it without a word. The waitress came by. I ordered coffee, nothing else. Plates clinked, wine poured, voices overlapped. Then Marcus stood. He tapped his glass with the back of a spoon. Quick toast, he said. Before dessert. Julia smiled, already flushed from the wine. We've got some exciting news, he continued. Family news. I set my cup down. Marcus looked around, drew out the moment. We'll be moving into my mom's apartment soon. She's ready to downsize. Laughter, light claps, one or two surprised glances. Julia leaned into the attention. It's just time you know, new chapter. Fresh energy. I lifted my coffee, took one sip, held it midair. That's odd, I said. Every head turned. The building just renewed my lease, I continued. 10 years. Silence. A fork hit the floor. Julia froze. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. What I reached into my bag, pulled out a single folded page, placed it on the table beside the breadbasket. I brought the confirmation, just in case. No one reached for it. Marcus blinked. But Mom, we talked. We said we'd talk? I interrupted. Calm. Even. Julia looked from the paper to Marcus. Her mouth opened, then closed. Of course, I added. It's still in my name. I sipped again. Hot, steady. From across the room, someone stood. Mr. Geller, my attorney. He didn't wave, just nodded once, then stepped outside. I placed my cup down, folded my napkin, dabbed the corner of my lip. No one moved. Julia's mother looked down. Julia's father cleared his throat. I stood, picked up my coat, pushed in my chair. Marcus stared at the paper like it might burst into flame. I'll let you enjoy your dessert, I said quietly. I walked to the door. Not fast, not slow. Outside, the night air met my skin. Crisp. Clean. I breathed in. Let it settle. Behind me, voices rose. Someone said my name. I didn't turn. My phone buzzed once. I ignored it. My steps were steady as I reached the corner. They banged on the door like it was on fire. First the bell, then the knock, then both. I kept folding. One towel, one shirt. A pillowcase I'd kept since Marcus was small. The threadbare edge was coming loose. I ran my thumb along it. Mom. Marcus shouted from the hall. We need to talk. Open up. Julia's voice followed. Shrill. Tight. You blindsided us. At dinner, are you serious? Another knock, then a harder one. I folded the last shirt, laid it on the stack, smoothed the corners. Mom, don't make this ugly. We just want to clear the air. I picked up the laundry basket, walked it to the bedroom. Behind me, their voices rose. Julia cursed. I didn't flinch. They could knock. They could shout. They could stand out there all afternoon, but I wouldn't open the door. On the inside of it, just above the handle, a note was taped. I had written it 3 weeks ago, back when Marcus first started dropping hints, back when Julia began excluding me from dinner's birthdays updates, before the brunch, before the camera, before the files. It said, if you are here for what you think is yours, please remember, you were given love, not permission. I never sent it. Never had to. They never saw it. Another bang. Then silence. Then one last knock. Quieter this time. I didn't turn. I carried the basket into the bedroom, set it down. Sat on the edge of the bed. My knees didn't ache today. I listened. Footsteps, muffled voices, a frustrated breath. Then the elevator. Then nothing. I stood, walked back to the door. Didn't rush. I looked through the peephole. The hall was empty. I undid the deadbolt, then turned the small brass knob beneath it. Click. Not to let anyone in, just to remind myself who held the lock. I filled the kettle. Water hissed against the base. I didn't rush. The morning light slid across the floor, touched the table legs, paused at the chair I always chose. I opened the cabinet, reached for the old mug. White ceramic, a chip near the rim. Still whole. Same one from Christmas Eve. I rinsed it, dried it, placed it on the counter. The kettle clicked. I poured the water over the grounds. The smell rose sharp, bitter, full. I waited, then poured slowly into the mug, one hand on the handle, the other steadying the base. The first drop didn't spill. I set the pot down, held the mug in both hands. Heat spread through my fingers. I breathed in, not too fast, not too slow. The chair scraped softly as I pulled it back. I sat, back straight, feet flat. No ache in my spine today. On the table, the envelope waited. Red ink, my handwriting. Only open if they return. I hadn't sealed it out of fear. I'd sealed it out of choice. I didn't look inside. I already knew what it said. The window was cracked open. Cold air crept in just enough. Across the way, a bird landed on the railing, small, dark-feathered. Still. I raised the mug, took my first sip. Strong. I didn't flinch. In the quiet, nothing broke. No voices, no demands, no corrections masked as concern. I set the mug down. It didn't clatter. I reached for the folder behind the envelope, opened it. Inside, Deed Trust Revised, Will Signed. I slid it back into place. Closed it. Coffee steam curled toward the window. I let it drift. No one was knocking. No one shouting my name from the hall. For the first time in months, there was no performance, no angle, no show to sit through, just a cup, a seat, a room I didn't owe to anyone, and the first drop still warm in my hand.